Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Even People Show. I'm your host, Mark Matthews, and I have an interesting show for you today. If this is your first time joining the show, why I thank you so much. If you don't join it live, but you join it later on, well, I thank you so much just the same in it. So today, if you didn't know, now you're about to find out. I'm an author of a book called Love Life Confrontation Expressions Selections from the Chronicles of a Black Man. This book is available online on Amazon.com. It's also available in Fontana pharmacies if you're in Jamaica. And check it out. It's a book of poetry, all kind of niceness kind of poetry. Make you want think about things twice kind of poetry. But anyways, here we are. I'm in a good mood today. I've had a long week. Whenever I have a long week and then I get a day off, I'm excited. It's a pity I didn't end up in Miami tonight. But we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about first dates tonight. Where's my banner? Banner, where are you? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Banner. We're going to talk about first dates tonight. And I love first dates. First dates are awesome. First dates are the thing that inspired a plethora of poems for me personally. I've written a lot of poems after a first date. First dates have, there's just this thing about first dates, you know, it's like, it just makes, there's so much hope. That's what I think. First dates have so much hope. There's so much potential. There's so much newness. There's so much energy surrounding first dates that they have the potential to be explosive, because you have to remember that there are some folks out there that their first date is right now, their first date they ever went on is right now sitting in the sofa watching TV, or their first date they ever went on is right now in the kitchen washing up some dishes, because that first date that they went on was magic. And they were lucky enough to meet the person for them on day one. The first date became the only date. And they are still right now happily with, whether married or not, to the person that they went on that first date on. And that, my brothers and sisters, is priceless. You have other people that are not so lucky. They've been on many first dates. Well, is it luck or not? I don't know. Maybe not. There's a point we can argue. But you have some people that right now, their first date, the first person they went on an official date on, is right now in the sofa watching TV, because that first date sparked a flame that is still blazing now. Others have been on many first dates. You've been on many first dates. You've met several people, but like I'm saying, there's a magic about first dates. There's a magic about first dates because of the potential attached to it. You are meeting somebody for the first time, and there's so much potential. So, and I'm getting, you know what? This show gonna be short because I'm getting excited. When I'm excited, I just give you everything I have for you all at once. But think about it. Nowadays, I'm going to talk about this first, and I'm talking about something else. Nowadays, in the online dating era, think about this. Think about this. You could actually meet someone. So you're on, I don't know if they have any in my home country. I don't know if they have any in other countries. All I know is what they have here in the US. My bad. So you have everything from Tinder, which I was told is like um more like of a hookup type deal. I don't know. Ever been on it? Everything to eHarmony that matches you on 57 different types of whatever the hell, right? And then you have Match.com, you have BlackPeopleMeet.com, you have too much fish, something about fish. You have all these things out there that people are using to meet people. And then you still have the organic fashion where you bump into someone in the grocery store, somebody hands you something, somebody you ask somebody who just happens to be beside you, can you reach that for me? They hand it to you. Next thing you know, you look at the person, they look at you, and something sparks. It can be as beautiful as that. It could be somebody that you knew for a very long time. You were just platonic friends. Something happened at one point and it sparked a flame, and the flame got ablaze and the flame stayed blazing, right? We're talking about first dates. We're talking about what I think is one of the most magical things out there, because a first date, I don't know. Can you tell I'm excited? I love first dates. First dates can be up. First dates has so much potential, man. You could meet somebody on a first date that just blows your mind and changes your life. Think about it. You could be at a point in your life where you're thinking, yeah, I'm gonna hang up the towel. No more men are out there, no more women are out there, whatever. And one day you're just sitting there in the corner of wherever, whatever restaurant or place you're in. You had a long week, you're busy, you're tired, you're sitting in the corner, not paying any attention to anybody, and the bartender brings you over a drink. And you say, I didn't order a drink. And the bartender says, no, it's from that guy over there, or it's from that girl over there. And when you look over there, somebody says hi. And that person comes over, and from that moment, your entire life is changed because of that person. That to me is magic. And I'm surprised that it took this long to do this show called First Dates, because first dates are awesome. I love first dates. First dates are awesome. First dates are have the potential, because think about it. If you are on a first date, then you're aspiring to have a relationship. You're at a point in your life that you want to take something to the next level potentially, and you go on a first date. And you have the potential with every first date you go on to meet the one, right? And I hope y'all checking out my grays. I'm done. I stopped coloring my hair for a little bit. I want to see what it looks like. Do let me know if you like it. I might keep it or I might color it back in it. So the first dates have all this potential. You know what I mean? Because you could meet the one. Y'all watch The Matrix? Neo was the one that they had searched for a long period of time, and everybody wanted to meet the one. And Neo was the one. But you can meet the one on a first date, and those first dates can be as accidental as literally bumping into somebody. That first date can be sparked by something as simple as I remember being in Nick Grill restaurant in Orlando, and I turned around one day and I saw a lady, and she was beautiful, beautiful lady. She was made up, full face of makeup. She looked like she was going to attend an event. She hadn't gotten dressed yet, but she went and got her hair and her makeup done, and she looked good. I turned around and I saw her, and I was like, wow. It was just surprising to me. I turned around and I was like, wow, you're so beautiful. And she smiled from ear to ear. I felt like I made her whole month in that moment. And then I got what I was getting, walked out, and left. Well, as I was leaving, I could see her still talking to her friends about the fact that that statement had made her moment so much in that time. You know what I mean? And first dates are born out of moments like that. I mean, where you could arbitrarily just run into somebody. You could legitimately be working at some place, and a part of your role at that job is to hire people. You're a part of the hiring staff and you interview people. And somebody walks in for an interview and you're like, whoa, Like there's something happening here. Like you're feeling the person's energy, they're feeling your energy. You're just in the zone, right? So you see how much I'm rambling? I'm excited about first dates, man. I've had a lot of good first dates. Mind you, there are bad first dates too, which we're going to talk about later on. But first dates can be magic. First dates can be magic because it has all the potential in the world to become more. First dates are special because they have the potential to become more. People have had first dates that have lasted for days. People have had first dates that have lasted for years. People have had first dates that have lasted for a lifetime. But not all of them go that route. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here, and we're going to mix it up a little bit because that's what we do here on the Evelyn People Show. So let's go. All right. So a first date, like we said, it can be a beautiful and a magical thing. It can begin with something great, or it might not. Now, you have those first dates. You have those first dates where y'all know, especially women. Women do this a lot, right? I remember being on first dates back in the day. Back in the dating years, dating online and whatnot here in the U.S. and a girl's phone would ring, and I'd bust out laughing because they had a predetermined friend that was going to call them. So when they arrived, they'd tell their friend, "Hey, I arrived. This is the name of the guy, blah, 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 blah," because you can never tell. You can never tell. So they said, in 30 minutes from now, call me and I'm going to tell you whether or not I'm going to. So when that phone call comes in, when a woman is on a date, I don't think men do that. But when a woman is on a date and that phone rings 30 minutes in, that's that friend that she prearranged to call 30 minutes in. And she's either going to say, "Yeah, hey, yeah, no, I'm busy. No, we're good. Okay, I see you later. Bye," and hang up. Or she's going to say, "Oh my God, really? Really? Okay, I'll be there right away." And she's going to bounce because she's giving you that 30 minutes or that hour, whatever it is, to capture her imagination, to capture her interest. And if you actually are at that point where you do that, then she continues. But she has that 30-minute call in to say, if you're not at that point, then she's gonna bounce, right? But then you have first dates that literally I've been on first dates. I've known people to go on first dates that never want that first date to end. You meet someone, it's electric, it's magic. They're smiling at your jokes, you're smiling at their jokes. They're funny, they're attractive, they're intelligent. They get where you're coming from. They have the same goals as you do, they have the same aspirations as you do, or they're totally opposite, but somehow the opposites attract. And first dates have all the potential to be just that. And I love first dates. Anywho, let me not go on anymore. Let's get into my cards and see what I have here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the method. So if you're gonna do a first date, we have a couple things we're gonna bust through here. And actually, before I go there, let me mention this: a first date, right? Before you overthink it and what it should have and the characteristics that is necessary for it. Think about this. A first date can be anything or should be anything that stimulates conversation. Because think about it, a first date is it's just that, a first date. You are having your first interaction with someone that you either work with, you either saw, you either met online, you either ran into in a supermarket at random, and you said another date to meet up. So this is your first official date. So a first date is anything or needs to be anything that stimulates conversation. So when you're planning it out, don't overthink it. Make sure you have the ability to have conversation. Make sure the place that you choose, you guys have the option to have conversation. And the environment really can be any kind of environment that gives you the ability to lean into the person and talk to them. You see what I'm saying? It can't be a concert too loud. It shouldn't be a loud venue. A loud venue is just that, a loud venue, too loud. It needs to be somewhere that you guys can sit, you can talk, You can hear what the person has to say. The person can hear what you have to say. If things are going well, you get the option to lean into them, and you guys can, take the conversation into another way. And you need to make sure that you plan it out. So let's say you have the ambiance of it just right. Let's see what Vimba is saying. It says, could a first date go left, and yet that could end up as your forever person? I like it. Could a first let's deal with this. I was gonna bounce it for later, but let's deal with it. Could a first date go left, and yet that ends up being your forever person? Absolutely, yes, it could be. Yes, it could be so. And I'll give you an example. I went on a first date one time, many, many moons ago. I was dating on, it might have been, I was online dating because I work too much. So I have to online date. I don't know anybody around me. So I think I was on eHarmony, and I went on a date. This is something I was planning for later, but let's jump in. I arrived at the location, and the person, I actually saw the person. So I was pulling up in my car. I was there. I was a little early, and I saw the person pull up, and I was like, it looks like the person, but the person had profiled a particular way on their profile. Then they showed up. They were probably 35 to 50 pounds heavier. All the photos they had posted were older photos when they were in better shape and looked quite a bit different. And I was like, I actually for a very long time felt like I'm not going to get out this car. I'm just going to leave until something came up, right? But then I went, and the person was a great conversationalist, and we had a really, really good time in conversation. But then I didn't go any further because I felt like they misrepresented themselves quite a bit. Yeah. However, I've known instances where individuals have ended up together that had terrible, terrible, terrible first dates. It is absolutely possible for you to have a bad first date, and that person ends up being your forever person, because first dates have a certain amount of things, a certain amount of expectations, a certain amount of anxiety that is surrounding it. And if you don't handle those things properly, you might get the end result that you actually weren't seeking. You might get an end result that you don't want. But it doesn't mean that the person does not have, because sometimes people just don't understand the etiquette of it. Okay. And you know what? That's going to segue us into what comes next. Because some persons don't have the etiquette of it, they might ask questions they shouldn't ask. Or you guys might end up there where, because the female or the big or male was so caught up in what they were going to wear, how they were going to look, getting their makeup done, getting this done, making sure everything was right, getting their car washed, getting everything done, that they spend so much time on that they never actually thought about what they're actually going to talk about. And then they get there and they're both mute. Hi, Martin, nice to meet you. And then all of a sudden y'all have nothing to say to each other, and then you're just there like, oh, okay, awkward silence. I wish there was a mariachi band coming by to play a guitar, whatever. You see what I'm saying? So let's talk about the method. Let's talk about what are some of the things that you could do. Let's talk about some of the questions that you can ask in a first date or on a first date to make sure that things keep flowing. All right, so check this out. So we're on our first date here. Whether you're a man or a female, we're on our first date here. Okay. If you're male, do this with a female. Anyways, one of the questions you can ask, should ask, or want to ask in general. Let's look at it generally first. The questions you want to ask on a first date are questions that give you insight into who the person is. That's what you want to ask. You want to find out who they are, what their tastes are, and see if you guys can actually align. So I'm saying that's what you're seeking. If you're on a first date, you want to ask questions. You want to ask open-ended questions to give the person an opportunity to share parts of themselves. You see what I'm saying? And you see now, while they're sharing, if the parts of themselves that you're sharing align with who you are as a person. And don't kid yourself. If it doesn't, it doesn't. No matter what the person look like, no matter where them come from, no matter how they present. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And if it doesn't, don't force the issue, and that's okay. But you want to ask certain questions to give the person an opportunity to present certain aspect of their personality so that you can then assess whether or not this is something that is going to work for you. Let's see what Miss Salmon has to say. My first date with my husband wasn't a good one, but 33 years later, here we are. 30, what? 33, 23, 23 years later, here we are. That's good stuff right there. I don't think I've ever been with myself for 23 years straight. I left myself a while back. Anyways, questions you want to ask are, or some examples of said questions are, let's see. If you could travel anywhere right now, if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go? That's a brilliant question to ask somebody on a first date. If you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go? Because now you're trying to ascertain, now you're going to get a viewpoint as to whether or not that person is an introvert, that person is an extrovert, that person likes to travel, that person doesn't want to go anywhere. That question opens up a lot of things, and you need to listen to the answer, because the answer kind of give you a window into who the person is. And by saying, Tanasha, you have a fantastic thing going there, my dear, with your 23 years strong with Hubby Dubby. Yes, man. That's good stuff, my dear. I love. That's good stuff. Another question that you should ask, or another type of question you should ask, is what's something you want to learn? What is something you want to learn or get better at? What is something you want to learn or get better at? What this will tell you based on their response is what they're interested in, what their aspirations are, what capabilities they have. You see what I'm saying? And these are the things, if you're trying to understand, because here's the thing. You must understand that there are a lot of generic things about people. There's a lot of generic things about people. Several characteristics that people have, put them everybody in the same box, right? When you're on a first date, you're trying to ascertain whether or not this individual that you're talking to is not in the big pool of person, but somehow is in that little niche that you're in, and you guys can work in. All right. So when you ask questions like, what is something you want to learn or get better at? You're trying to ascertain whether or not this person's interests, whether their aspirations, whether the things that they're capable of are something that falls within your own wheelhouse of things, because you're trying to find a partnership here, right? So that's a very good question to ask on a first date. Another one is, what's something I wouldn't guess about you? What is something I wouldn't guess about you? Now, by the time you get to this question, you're borderline flirting. Now, I hope you don't have these questions pre-planned and you're just asking them down the line, because if you do that, you might be asking the question when the vibe is not really there. You see what I'm saying? One of the most important things about first dates is you have to be able to read the crowd. You have to be able to understand and identify whether or not the person that you're on a first date with is actually feeling you. You know what I mean? Especially if you're feeling them. You know what I mean? I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and I was telling them, I remember working in Manhattan many years ago, and I hired this young lady, and she was attractive. I mean, this was one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my lifetime, in my opinion, right? And I hired her. She worked for me, but her comfort level with the proximity that she needed to be in when we communicated was different than mine. So she was very, very comfortable being this close to me when we spoke. I wasn't. But I couldn't deduce whether or not it was that she liked me as an individual, or whether or not she was just a nice person, or whether or not this was just the proximity from which she was comfortable communicating with. You see what I'm saying? So when you are on a first date, when you're meeting somebody for the first time, you want to say things and ask questions to kind of feel them out, to kind of see whether or not they're on the same thing that you're on. So this question we were looking at is, what's something I wouldn't guess about you? This is when you're at the point where you're comfortable enough with the person that you're with, because that question in itself is a flirtatious question. It opens up the opportunity for them to tell you something that not everybody knows about them. You know what I mean? And you want to ask it in such a way that it solicits that kind of response. All right. Now, another question you could ask is, what is your favorite place on earth? What is your favorite place on earth? Now, the question of what is your favorite place on earth gives you several levels of perspective based on what the answer is. Because, all right, I run the scenario for you. If I ask you, okay, I'm a Jamaica boy. I'm from Jamaica. I'm from Mandeville. If I ask you, and so say I'm in Mandeville, meet somebody there, we go on a first date, and I ask them, what's your favorite place on earth? And they said to me, well, that place down in Santa Cruz where we have this and that and that and that. And that they're not, absolutely not that there's nothing wrong with Santa Cruz, but if during our conversation you realize that they've never left the island of Jamaica, then that kind of give you a hint as potentially to their lifestyle. If you ask them, what's your favorite place on earth? And they tell you, wow, I want to tell you, I went to Venice in Italy, and there was this place. It was this place by the water we were on, and it was just brilliant. Or you ask them, what's your favorite place on earth? And they tell you, man, I took a trek to the motherland. I went to Africa. I went to Ethiopia, and there was this lion that they had carved into the mountain, and I went up there and I took a photo of it, and that's just, there was just a certain level of peace and whatever. Basically, what I'm saying is that question kind of gives the individual that you're asking the opportunity to when they respond, you will get a gist of what their lifestyle is, because where they say that place is and everything else that they say in that conversation will kind of give you an idea of what it is that they do, what it is that they're capable of doing. And that gives you a sense of what their lifestyle is. And like we said, we're talking about first dates. We're talking about the things you do with someone on their first date. And when you're on a first date, you want to, you're playing a match game. You're trying to match the pieces. You're trying to match the pieces over here with the pieces over here, and you're trying to see how well they come together. That's what you're doing when you're on a first date. So you want to ask these kind of open-ended questions to see if what the person's going to say actually matches where you're at. Now, another question you can ask is, what's your dream job? What is your dream job? And again, what the person answers to that is going to give you an indication as to what motivates them. It speaks to their character. It speaks to how they see themselves in the world. It speaks to their drive or the lack thereof. Now what they say, you have to ask these type questions, these open-ended questions that gives them the opportunity to speak to who they are. That's what you want on a first date. Because remember now, we're talking about first dates, and anybody can simulate a good first date. Anybody can simulate a good first date. That's why we want to do this thing a particular way. Anybody can simulate a good first date. Me can dress up good, shine off my pants, clean, put on a nice outfit and go out the road and totally misrepresent myself, because I'm showing you what I think you want to see. You see what I'm saying? Or, and I can pull this off for quite a period of time too. You see what I'm saying? This is why on a first date, you want to ask certain questions that give the person an opportunity to speak to who they are. And you need to listen to what they say, and you need to read between the lines, and you need to understand whether or not this is the person you actually want to have a second date with. Because like I said, first dates can be magical, but it can also be a disaster. Let me see what Miss Mudimu is saying here. But what's the most important thing to get out of the first date? What is the most important thing? I guess really what you're looking for in a first date is whether or not a second date is warranted. Whether or not a second date is warranted, whether or not this person is going in a direction that I even want to entertain at all, whether this person is even on the same wavelength that I am on, whether or not there's several things that you want to get out of a first date. Because ultimately, if you're on a date, you're dating. If you're dating, you're trying to establish a relationship. If you're trying to establish a relationship, you're trying to be in a relationship with someone. You see what I'm saying? So when you are out of the first date, you wanna deduce as much as you can about the individual to make an informed decision as to whether or not this is somebody you even want to go on a second date with, or whether or not this person is moving in the direction that you're moving with, or whether or not you have to drop them and leave. Another comment you had on here is, that's why I wonder if we put too much weight on the first date. Um, Not necessarily. We don't necessarily put too much weight on the first date, but we want to be strategic about the first date because we don't want to ignore the things that actually come out of said date. You see what I'm saying? And you're right. Sometimes we write off people that are great people. You know what I mean? Sometimes we put people down that has more potential than we perceive them to have because we misperceived them when we met them. Sometimes we give people more credit than they should have been given because they were able to present a particular way on the first date. You see what I'm saying? But what we're getting at here and what we're going through here is that if you ask them the right set of questions, at least you will potentially set yourself up to deduce certain information from them, and that is information that you can use that can help you. Hail up King One Love. You come up as Facebook user, but hail up your damn self. Same way. You know what I mean? Um, because I feel like you're meeting that person's representative on the first date. Potentially you can. It depends. First dates are tricky because it depends on where the person is. I mentioned this on another show where I say sometimes you might end up with a person, and the reason you're end up with the person you're with is because you met them at a time that you wanted to be with someone. You met them at a time that you were single and you were just open. You were at a point in your life that you wanted to meet someone. And you met a representative, and the representative represented what they should have represented. They checked enough boxes, and you end up down a situation you shouldn't be in. And sometimes that happens. You know what I mean? But the questions that we're looking at now are questions that are designed to say, to deduce. Melanie, hold on. Me stop talking now. Melanie, my dear from the Virgin Islands. Your name came up as Facebook user. It doesn't say Melanie does. If I did you, but that bust enough blanking at the ear like sky, sky, sky. Lovely to have you, my dear. I don't know why you're coming up as Facebook user, but you are my dear friend. Big up the Virgin Islands and the people them checking in. Big up people checking in from wherever you are right now. All right. Now, check this. Another question you should ask a person or could ask a person on a first date is, um, what's your dream job? What's your dream job? And asking a person what their dream job is kind of helps you understand what motivates them, and it kind of speaks to their character. You see what I'm saying? So what Vimbai has said earlier when she made, was it this comment here? Nope, it was this comment here when she was saying that that's why I wonder if we put too much weight on a first date. What we're saying with that is that you need to be asking the right questions. You need to make sure that when you are on that first date, you're asking the things, you're asking the questions that are going to give you responses, that is going to give you an insight into who the person is. And yes, they can bring their representation, but if you don't even ask certain questions that really makes them have to represent who they are, here's the thing: they're either absolutely blatantly lie to you in telling you who they think you want them to be, or, and if that is the case, then later on when the truth comes out, you'll have something to go off, or you'll get a better representation of who they really are. Another question you can ask is, what's something you are proud of? What is something that you are proud of? When you ask someone what they are proud of, you kind of get um, what they consider meaningful, what they consider valuable. You kind of get a sense of their self-awareness as well. You see what I'm saying? So these are the kind of open-ended questions you want to ask, because that will give you kind of like a window into the world of the person that you're talking to. Let's go through a couple more of these real quick. Another one says, if you didn't have to work to support yourself, how would you spend your time? I think this is valuable. The question says, if you didn't have to work to support yourself, how would you spend your time? This kind of tells you what the person values and what their interests are. Because if you did not have to work, think about it. Who do I have on here? Melanie, Vimbai, Tanasha, whoever else is on here. If you didn't have to work to support yourself, how would you spend your time? And in answering that question, it kind of gives me an insight as to who you are. You know what I mean? If you say, well, I like to spend all my days at the beach. I'd never really get out of bed. I'd spend all my days in bed. Somebody say I'd sign myself with a non-for-profit organization. I would see if I can help disenfranchised youths in the communities and so on. It gives you these kind of questions make the person has to share real things about themselves. You know what I mean? And these are the kind of questions you want to ask on a first date when you're really trying to ascertain whether or not the person you're on said for first date is where you are at. All right. Now, the question you can ask is there anything you don't eat? The reason you want to ask, or you could ask this question, is there anything you don't eat? Is because you want to make sure that if you are planning a date, or if you guys actually get to a second date, you want to make sure that you're dealing with things that are ethical from that person's standpoint, something that might be culturally different from that person's standpoint, whether or not they have any religious or lifestyle differences from you that you need to bear in mind if you're planning a date. You know what I mean? You can imagine you plan a date to a steakhouse for a vegetarian. You know what I mean? These are things that you want to ask to make sure that, hey, the person is on that level that you're on when it comes to certain things. Now, another question you can ask is, what appeals to you most about living here? This is a question you'd ask for somebody that you run into, or somebody that is in your same geographical area. Like, what's something that appeals to you most about living here? That'll give them the opportunity, or give you the opportunity to listen for things that you guys might have in common, or to hear whether or not y'all have nothing in common. You know what I mean? You're here and they say, what's something that appealed to you about living in Florida? Oh yeah, I love the beaches. I just like to lay out in the sun. I like the weather. And the other person is thinking, yeah, I want to go out and do deep sea fishing. And me and my buddies, we go hunting. And you're like, hunting? Where y'all sleep at night? Outside in a tent? What? You know what I mean? You just want to sleep on the beach and go back into your 5-star hotel room, go chill. It gives you an insight as to whether or not the person's on the same wavelength as you are. So, like we're saying, and like we've been saying, on these first dates, you want to ask questions that kind of, Melanie, I see you now. You want to ask questions that kind of gives the person an opportunity to really share who they are. All right, let's get caught up on our comments here. Hold on, anybody have enough commenting? This says, I would spend my time trying to transform the mental health system. Okay, so that's the question that we'd ask if you didn't have to work for a living. Essentially, what would you spend your time doing? Vimba said she would spend her time trying to transform the mental health system. Now, if you don't know anything about who this person is, you're on a first date with this person, you ask them this question and they say that, then you get an insight into who they are. You realize they're somebody that cares about other people. You realize they're somebody that cares about mental wellness. How they say they would spend their time gives you insight into who they are as a person. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. These are the kind of questions you want to ask on a first date, because these are the questions that would give the what they say would hint as to who they are behind the facade, if they are projecting one. So you ask questions that get at the root of a person's personality. So instead of asking direct questions like, do you care about whatever, rather you'd ask questions that help you understand the person. Yes, because here's the thing, political correctness is the thing. On first dates, everybody wants to say what they want the other person want to hear, especially if the person is visually pleasing. You know what I mean? Attractive people have the hardest time finding people sometimes because they find a lot of people, but to find the right person going to take them a minute because they're attractive. Attractive sometimes can be a sin like curse. You know what I mean? You actually have to ask the questions that going to let you actually see who the person really is. You know what I mean? And when you ask them questions that that puts them in a position to share aspects of who they are and of themselves, then you get a better glimpse as to who they are. Melanie is saying, Martin, my profile showing now. Loving this conversation. Melanie, I'm glad you're here. I wouldn't have wanted to have this conversation without you, my dear. All right, let's keep it moving on up like George and Wheezy. Where we at? Tell me about your family. Blessings. New York is in the house. Katie, about your best of yourself, my dear. Tell me about your family. Now, that tell me about your family question is a tricky one. And it's one you definitely want to listen to. I remember back in the day, in the dating years, you know what I mean? I met someone and we went out on a date. And when we asked that question about tell me about your family and then tell me the whole of the gingeration story, me I say, yo, no, time to leave. You need to listen for these things. You want to ask people about these things on the first date because that gives you an insight as to whether or not their situation is something that you can actually deal with. I remember being on a first date one time and somebody asked me a question I'd never been asked before on a first date. They asked me what my thought was on elderly parents living in the home and something to that effect. And I'm like, whoa, yo, this is some deep stuff because they had an elderly parent. And based on the health state of the elderly parent, the health that parent would probably have to live with them or whoever she got with seriously, the parent would have to live with them. And that question got asked. You know what I mean? And if I was someone that wasn't really with a depend in-law living in my house, then that wouldn't work from this or onwards. You understand? So these are questions that you want to ask kind of questions on a first date to kind of get some insight into who the person is. You don't want to ask yes or no questions. You want to ask questions that are open-ended and give them an opportunity to really share who they are. I think I see my brother G. Cole in the rows. G. Cole, my brother. G, watch me. Who that? Who that? We got the Burning. We got Jedan Terrible and Survival up there, so, and His Imperial Majesty around there, so. We're just trying out some stuff, mate. We're just trying out some stuff in it. Diane, go on, Richie, bless up yourself, my dear. I appreciate your comment, my dear. All right, so check this. Another one we have here is, who is the most influential person in your life? Who is the most influential person in your life? Now, when you ask a person who is the most influential person in their life, you need to go so and listen, because how they answer that question is going to tell you what they value, right? It's going to tell you what they value. It's going to tell you their family dynamic based on how that question is answered. It's going to tell you about their friends based on how that question. Who is the most influential person in your life? You see what I'm saying? Because here what we're talking about, like we said, we've had people on the show so far right now today that have said their first date, they're still with that person 20 odd years later. And it's magical. It's a beautiful thing. And first dates have the potential to be just that. However, first dates can go left. And you can have whole heap of first dates we can take you down the path of a whole heap of pasa that really just be as a cycle that keeps going around. What we're trying to ascertain here, people, is the things that you can ask somebody on a first date. Shoot, you can ask them even now if you're not already dating, to see whether or not this person is truly where you are at, whether or not this person's aspirations and goals and dreams and where them see themselves in a 5 and 10 years is consistent with where you see yourself in 5 and 10 years. Because guess what? If it's not aligned, we're not going to be together in a 5 and 10 years, because guess what? You're going north and them go south, and it just not going to work. G. Cola said, funny and far-fetched as it seems, the first date I took with my wife was to church. Can't go wrong with church, my boy. Can't go wrong with church. Can't go wrong with church. Actually, you can go wrong with church, but I'm glad you didn't go wrong with church. Yeah, so no, it's something that you really, really have to look into. It's something that you a first date is something that, like I said, G, you come in late. Anytime G come towards me, I have to acknowledge him. Is my brother from another mother. But a first date can be magical, man. A first date can be magical. You can have a first date with somebody and you go home and you can't sleep. The minute you all part, you call your best friend and say, yo, my youth, my girl, yo, yo, he was so this or she was so this. I can't believe this what happened. And we're gonna and you're excited, you're elated, you're ignited. Right? First date has the potential to be all that. You know what I mean? And it has the potential to go all the way left too. Another question you can ask is, do you still keep in touch with your childhood friends? This can tell you two things: whether or not they have, long relationships, whether or not this is somebody that change out all their friend every other year, whether or not it's somebody that is mature, or it tells you a lot about a person, just the fact that whether or not they're still intact with their childhood friends. So if we're talking about things you should ask and questions you should ask and how you should ask them in order to ascertain certain amount of information to help you kind of wrap your head around whether or not this person that you bump into in the grocery store or the person that you like their profile is actually who you think they are. Those are some of the questions that you can ask. Now, questions that you should not ask and questions that should be a red flag for you if they are asked are this: how much money do you make? How much money do you make? Now, somebody ask you that on the first. If somebody asked me that on the first date, me I got suspect. Why you want to know how much money I make? You want to give me a money or you want some of my money? Oh, this I go. Well, go on answer. Yeah, you don't want to ask somebody that. I learned that. Well, did I learn? No. Just don't ask nobody that. Yeah, take my word for it. Another one is, what happened between you and your ex? Yo, dog. Well, you're busy with the people that them and ex for. Asking somebody what happened between them and their ex is not, it's a question that can be asked. It's a question that should be asked. But it's not a question that should be asked on the first date necessarily. You see what I'm saying? You want, because it kind of gives two things. It kind of gives a kind of feeling of insecurity. It's like you're insecure about who you are and you're insecure in yourself. You see what I'm saying? And it's kind of like an awkward question, because if it's a thing where now you're requiring the person to give some information that might just be kind of something in a la la land, it better you just leave it. The first question is, did you smash the homie? Yo, my dog. Can't ask her that, dog. You can't. This is an example of what not. Watch me. This is an example of what not to ask on a first date. Don't ask her if she smashed the homie. Don't ask her if she smashed him on the first date. Don't ask her nothing like that. That's not going to get you nowhere. Another question is, do you do this often? Do you do this often? What are you trying to see? How much man she a date, dog? Leave that alone. Don't ask nobody that. Don't ask nobody that. Right? And a lot of these questions are directed from man to woman, because y'all know how the dating game goes. Usually the man trying to, yeah. Anyways, are you attracted to me? Is another question. Don't ask nobody if I'm attracted to your dog. You're in a situation, you're in a first date situation. You should be aware enough to kind of identify whether or not the person that you're with is feeling your vibe. If you are in a first date with somebody and you can't tell whether or not you guys are vibing, you're not supposed to dip on the first date. You better your leg up. You see what I'm saying? If you have to ask the question, are you attracted to me? You're missing the point altogether. And see what Diane is saying. Diane is saying, I can talk about a first date because from the first, my girl, that's an unfinished statement. I can't talk about a first date because from the first day I met, that missing something. Come up with your recite when you're ready. Another question that you probably want to avoid is, are you really going to eat that? Or if you ask somebody that, you can ask somebody that, are you really going to eat that? She order whatever she orders, it comes, and you're like, are you really going to eat that? A box if you box your dog, you don't go on good. You can't ask nobody that. On a first date, you don't want to ask somebody that, because asking somebody that is really passing judgment on them. You're passing judgment on them. It is negatively criticizing them is what it is. And I'm sure that's not what you're going for on a first date. So you don't want to ask somebody, are you really going to eat that on a first date? Leave the people alone. If they ordered it and they want to eat it or want to eat or parts of it, let them do that. It's a first date. You don't know who they are. Don't judge them because of what they ordered on their plate or for their first meal that you've ever had with them. If you want to have a second one, that is. Right? How much do you weigh? Dog, don't ask somebody how much they weigh. Don't ask somebody how much they weigh. If you're asking, nobody ask somebody how much they weigh unless they're very, very skinny or they think they're overweight. Don't ask anybody how much they weigh, please, on a first date. Don't ask anybody how much they weigh at all unless y'all are having a conversation about weight or they volunteer their weight. Don't just arbitrarily see them order something or at some random point in the date ask, how much do you weigh? You are going to get box. If I one of them damsel from St. Elizabeth, they might go box you. Don't ask them questions that you know Browning from down south. See? Down south. Do you mind picking up the tab? Do you mind picking up the tab? My youth, no matter what happens, if you're going out on a date with a woman for the first time, pick up the tab. She could have made 10 times more money than you. Pick up the tab the first time. It's principle. My friend Trisha Rowe is in the house. I haven't seen you for a while, my dear. Lovely to have you on the Evil People Show. She said, a turn off on the first date or the first time you're having a conversation and a person keeps talking about themselves and don't give you a chance to respond and seem cocky is a turn off. Like, keep talking about what they have and all that. Absolutely. And I thank you for that. That is something else you want to avoid like the plague. If you come in and you're telling, oh yeah, I have this and I have that, that means that you think she's a gold digger. And you think, say, a gold digger type conversations you need to have with her in order to get her. And that's why you're doing that. And it's an insult if you're actually talking to somebody that's not like that. You need to avoid that. You need to leave that alone. Appreciate that, my dear. Nobody don't want to hear about all the things and what you accomplish and what you have. You're here trying to understand who I am. You're here trying to get to know about me. Or are you here just trying to tell me about you? You ain't all that. Chill out. Relax. Diane says, I can't remember the first date because I met my husband at work when I was 16 and we were always around each other. But what I do remember is the way he treated me and made me feel. And now, 26 years later, we're still together. Now go make me cry. Me never know somebody I'm gonna need napkin. Somebody pass me some tissue. This is beautiful stuff, man. Good stuff that. Good stuff that. Good stuff that. I like that. People been together for 20 enough years. And Diane, I think me and Diane in the same class and we're about the same age and all these things. So if she did with somebody for 20 years, that's more than half her life. That's good stuff. Those questions result in very unpleasant, premature end to the date. This is true. This is true. That's why you have to make sure. G. Cola said to the massive, say, how about how savvy are you? Are you snooping around Facebook and IG? I need to know who I gonna block. Yep. I don't know, G. Call. I think that one might that one depending might be something you want to sneak in. Maybe not necessarily on the first date, but sometimes some people be. It's funny. I had that as one of the questions. I didn't include it in the list as what not to ask. But yeah, that's something you can ask. Like, I googled you. I think it said something like, I googled you and you asked something about something you saw when you googled them. Yeah, FBI, yeah, CIA. Where you Google me for? Don't Google me, Bridget. Do not Google me. You're looking to get blocked right now. All right. Another one is, and this one is kind of ticklish. This one is kind of ticklish, so I want y'all to bear with me here. Another question you shouldn't ask is, have you heard the good news about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Let's take a moment on that one. It says, have you heard the good news about our Lord and Savior? And I get it, for certain denominations and thing, you want to make sure that the person is aligned with you, but it's probably not a first date conversation, and you definitely don't want to bust out. You definitely don't want to bust out the truck. You definitely don't want to bust out the truck and start, you know what I mean? Give somebody two track for read and all them something up on the first date. That's not how you want to go about that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you shouldn't introduce whoever you want to introduce to the good Lord and Savior, but I'm saying on the first date, don't be busting out no truck. You know what I mean? I don't care if you Jehovah Witness or mom, and just don't. Okay, just let it go. Okay. Let me see why I see somebody ask me why not, But anyways, then is saying one turn off I hear guys talk about is going on a first date with a young lady, and all she talks about is I want, I want, I want. A young man told me that he took her home and never called her again. It's funny you say that. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I was talking to them about this show because as kind of put my thoughts together for the show, and they're saying that a first date should include the man taking the woman on a shopping spree. And I said, yes, I totally agree. I think we should totally go on a shopping spree, and I should give you $18,000 spend limit. And they're like, really? I'm like, hell no. A rough with man. But it's like what is this? No, this is not a thing. Not a thing at all. Like, we're trying to see if we are compatible to be together. If this is really actually about what I can give to you or what you can give to me, then it's a whole different kind of transaction. Those transactions are usually one-time transactions where I pay, you give, and we done. It ain't supposed to be no take home and wake up in the morning and make a breakfast kind of thing. Anyways, can you make ackee and sawfish? Never trust up. I'm gonna G Cole. I like when you come on the show, because you always make me see something I might have missed. On a first date, you want to ask young men out there, a young lady, can you make ackee and sawfish? And if she can't, she's not the one. Do not take her home to meet mother. Do not take her home to meet grandma. Tell her to go straight to jail. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. You understand? Now, when we were talking about the do not have them if they ever met the good Lord and Savior, Tanasha said, why not? I want to know upfront if your person is a believer so I don't waste my time. Okay, so Tanasha, boy, I can't go down that rabbit hole right now. It's a rabbit hole, and I can go down it, but it's too far in the show for me to go down that rabbit hole right this second. But I appreciate your comment, and I can respect that that's how you feel. And if you think that that is something that's going to make or break, and you should ask up front, ask it by all means. You see what I'm saying? But that's probably something I need to jot down, because that's a rabbit hole I wouldn't mind going down at all. Question you shouldn't ask is another one is, are you fertile? And another one is, are you on your period? Don't ask nobody if they're on their period, right? It's not something you ask. It's not something you do. Just don't do it. So what we're saying here is first dates can be magical. You go about them the right way, you can ascertain whether or not the person that you are on said first date with is somebody that you want to have a second, third, or 25 years later, that person will be washing the dishes while you're over here while you're over here strolling your Facebook page, right? How it goes, the chemistry that you feel, the energy that you feel, what happens is really, it's really the stuff that just great things are made of. I think first dates are magical. Unlike Tanasha, who said, or somebody said that, or Diane, one of them said they meet, they were working among their significant other for a while. It kind of just happened. Brilliant. But for now, in this age and time when people are meeting people online, people are meeting people, and communicating online, and they're meeting up for the first time in person, it kind of put a little more stress and strain on the situation. But what we're trying to get to, and what we covered in the first part of the show, is that certain questions that you want to ask, the type of questions you want to ask to try to ascertain who the person is, questions that gives them the opportunity to reveal things about their personality, and how openly they answer the questions, or whether or not they kind of divert the questions, is going to give you it's going to give you a hint as to whether or not this is somebody to actually want to move forward with. Dan is saying, boy, I agree. I agree. Make sure you can cook, or else you will love it out at the restaurant the rest of your life. Yep. Or eat out a mommy pot. And if this is something that is important to you, ask it. If this is something that is important to you, ask it. Because what you must understand, is that people that stay together for a long time are people that work together, are people that together they are okay being themselves with the other person. That's who work. If you have to put on a facade, it now go work for long. If you have to go outside of your way, it now go work for long. You see what I'm saying? So you really want to ask the questions to see whether or not you and this person gel. And it don't matter what they look like, with them this, what they have or nothing. If you and them don't really get along on the most basic level, it simply won't last. And it's really just that basic. You know what I mean? You like chess and them like checkers. Or no, just can't get along. You know what I mean? Remember Damon Marley have a song say, a two girl may have and I am stuck in between. And I start something if you don't know it, you don't know it. All right, peoples, but yeah, that's the dating scene. You know what I mean? It can be magical, it can be special. And I'm saying, when you do it, go out there, meet people, date people. That's what love. Those are the building blocks of love. Those are the building blocks of long-lasting love. Those are the building blocks that have made special a lot of relationships that are now special. But before those relationships became special, or had 25 years under their belt, or had 10 or 15 years under their belt, there was the first day, and there was the first date, and there was the first time you had an interaction with this person. And what we're saying is, in order to, for your sake, see whether or not that person, the person you want to go on a second or third or a fourth date with, you want to approach it a particular way so that you can really get an insight into the person, because nobody don't want to waste them time, my friend. Nobody wants to waste your time. If you're out there and you're looking for love, you don't want to waste your time with nobody when you dip on where you dip on. You want to make sure that they're where you're at. And you ask the questions you need to ask, you ascertain what you need to ascertain, and you make the decisions that you need to make based on what you find out. All right? We're on the Even People Show and we're having some fun. We have to read some poetry before we leave. The show is running longer than I thought. I started out, I felt like we're going to wrap it up quick. But here we are. So, first dates. I've written several poems about first dates. I've written several poems after being on first dates. Like I said, first dates are magical, man. There's just a certain electricity about it. But, all right, before I even read a poem for y'all, can you imagine? Think about this for a minute. You go out on a first date, you meet somebody, and you start talking to the person, and the person is on your intellectual level. The person is funny and they're smart. The person love you what you love, right? And you're talking together. You're looking at them eyes and you feel a kind of connection. You feel a kind of magic. You feel something you never felt before. You feel the thing where people refer to as butterflies in your blouse and skirt stomach, right? On a first date, and you're like, wow, you go when you go home, like it's like one of those dates that you don't want to end. You leave here, you go there. You leave there, you go there. You have like 3-4 dates in a one date because you're having such a good time with the person. You just don't want to leave. And then when you do leave, the moment you leave, you call your best friend. How you call this? How you call that? Or this person just saturates your brain. And now you're sitting down looking at your phone, wonder if they message, wonder if they call, wonder if whatever. And yes, it can just be infatuation, but it can be the building block of that thing that becomes that thing. Know what I mean? It can be the beginning of a thing that becomes that thing. And it's magical, man. And if you don't know, now you know. I do believe opposites do attract. My husband is on the quiet side and I am more talkative. I think we complement each other. And that's another good way that it works too. Somebody said them something a truth. And Trisha is saying, what about asking how they feel with men helping with the chores around the house? Ask if it is something that is valuable to you, because here's what you don't want to do, Trisha. Here's the position you don't want to get yourself in. You don't want to get yourself in a settled down situation with someone that really doesn't do some of the fundamental things that you need to be done. You understand? Everybody kind of has a perception of who they want their man to be, who they want their woman to be. So if you really need a man, we get up on Saturday morning, go cut the lawn and do this and do that, and that's what you need, because maybe that's what you grew up and see daddy doing. So because of that, that is what constitutes a real man to you. Another person might need a man that can provide everything and the woman have to provide nothing, because that's what you saw and that's what constitutes a real man to you. And conversely, you can have a man that need a woman to cook and clean and this, because that is what constitutes a desirable woman to him. And another man need a woman we can meet him halfway and blah, 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 because that is what he needs for him. You see what I'm saying? What you need to do first and foremost is identify and know what it is that you need and you want. And then when you go out and meet the person, you ask the questions that are necessary in a subtle way to have the person share aspects of themselves to see whether or not those aspects that they're sharing is consistent with what you need. Because everybody can compromise, but there are only certain things you can compromise with. Certain other things in what you need, you're not going to compromise it. You can't compromise it. You can try compromise it, you're not going to happy. You can try compromise it, you are going miserable. You see what I'm saying? So certain things, you want to get to the bottom of it early. You want to make sure that, it is consistent with where you're at. Because if it's not consistent and it's not easy, all right, put it away here. It's like we have something at work we call CMP. It's when you come up with these goals that you want to achieve for the year, right? And they say the goal must be measurable. It must be something that's easy to do on a daily basis, and it must be something that a couple other characteristics that it have. Essentially, you want to make sure that it's something you can actually do. You know what I mean? So in the significant other category, you want to make sure that this person is somebody that actually does the things you need them to do. You know what I mean? And it needs to come fairly easy. If it's a stretch, it not gonna last. If I'm really not the guy that to get up and go cut the lawn in the morning time, I mean, really, you know what I mean? It's gonna become problematic. If you tell me, Trisha, here I want to know. If you tell me if you come to church, I may say, yes, me I go come to church, but I really want to come to church, because I never really grew up in a church. And now, yeah, make me come to church. And when we are going to get married, we come to church for a little bit. And as soon, within a year after we married, me stop coming to church, and me not come to church again. Right? And now it become a problem. I see that growing up as a youth. Enough woman there at church and enough husband there road. It was a thing, it happened. Right? But you have to make sure, say, you have to see whether, you have to make sure that the person depend where you depend. Because of that, and that's the way you're gonna get longevity out of it. You know what I mean? And then I say, yes, Martin, I remember the days when, even though we were together in the days, I would look forward to his calls every night before I went to bed. Yeah. When you find magic, you find magic, When you find magic, you find magic. And I'm saying that love is magical, and first dates can be magical as well, because it just, that is where it all starts. That is when you sit across from a person and you really want to touch them, but you don't really know if you really want to touch them, but because the way they make you feel in that moment, you just really want to reach over and touch them. You know what I mean? When you're gone, you can't stop think about them. Yo, first dates are great. Take it from me, mate. I know these things, innit? So we're going to read something here, and it's called Day One. We're talking about first date, so we have to read Day One. Day One is out of the Chronicles of a Black Man, in it. I'm probably going to read 2 points here real quick, even though we're running late. But Day One, it's on page 47. This is probably one of the first copies of the first book. That's the one I have write up, And it says, Day One. I wrote this in 2012. It's now 2022. That's 10 years ago, right? That's how I go. She came adorned with rings and things. Don't remember the Red Bull, but I felt like I had wings, covered from head to toe, yet her radiance still showed. Her smile goes on for days, her eyes could light up a stage. Sensitive to the touch, kind words make her blush. Staying composed, sure her body doesn't tell, wanting to touch but hides it well. Willingly following my lead, questioning the amount of composure she'll need. A wave of emotion comes and goes. The battle of wits keeps her on her toes. Ha ha! The meeting of lips summons feelings of bliss. When bodies came close was when everything froze. Eyes closed, pulse racing, juices begin to flow. Lines cross, boundaries broken, whispering, nobody has to know. Too nervous to release the pleasures I seek. Though with every touch and every kiss, I get weak. But the door has been opened, its destination unknown, a tree planted, though still ungrown. Now steps must be taken and preparations made, a merger formed, evolution to the next stage. Blap, blap, blap. I like that, mate. I haven't read that in a while, innit? I haven't read that in a long time. But that's what I'm talking about, mate. We're talking about a first date. We're talking about first dates and the magic of a first date. This poem is called Day One. This poem is called Day One. And it's talking about a first date. But you can deduce how the feelings, you can deduce how the person felt from this first date. And that's what I started off saying, just how magical first dates can be. You know what I mean? Go imagine, you're 27. And I will say this, even though some of y'all say y'all 25 and 27 years in, man, go back on a date. Go on a date anyways. If it ain't the first one, go on the 127th one anyways. Make it like the first one. Set it up, schedule it, get a babysitter if you need to, on a dress in other places, and meet up and simulate that first date again, man. Ask those questions. I have their card games. I have a card game named Yard Cards from a damsel from Jamaica. We make them. It's a dating card. Get some yard cards, man. Go ask some questions and talk to each other like when you're just meeting each other for the first time and recreate that moment of bliss. Recreate that moment when it was all new, when everything was nice and new. You know what I mean? And have some fun with it. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Diane say, I love that poem, Martin. Trust me. When you know, you know. You get that feeling, mate. She said you get that feeling in it. I was going to read another one for y'all, but I'm not. You got to join me next week when we do the Even People Show live and direct again. All right, folks. I had some fun with y'all tonight. I'm glad y'all stuck it out with me. And I like every time that y'all check into the Evening People Show, I appreciate it. If you have not yet liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel, the Martin Matthews Project, check that out, man. Like and subscribe to the thing, man. And we build up the thing. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for joining me. Thank y'all for staying with me. You've been watching the Evening People Show. Take care.